Keisha Washington was cleaning the penthouse floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel when she found an unconscious man on the floor. She called an ambulance to save his life and performed CPR. She was unaware that the person she saved was CEO Richard Sterling, the billionaire, who had fired her mother 20 years ago for being pregnant. Keisha Washington pushed her cleaning cart through the marble corridors of the Grand Meridian Hotel's 42nd floor, the exclusive penthouse level reserved for the world's wealthiest guests. At 28, she had worked her way up from lobby maintenance to the hotel's most prestigious assignment, cleaning the luxury suites that cost more per night than most people earned in a month. The Grand Meridian was Manhattan's most exclusive hotel, catering to billionaires, celebrities, and heads of state who demanded absolute privacy and impeccable service. Keisha took pride in her work, understanding that her attention to detail and discretion had earned her the trust to access these private spaces where powerful people conducted their most sensitive business. Her mother, Diana, had always emphasized the importance of excellence in any job, regardless of how others might perceive the work. Every job has dignity when you do it with pride, Diana would say, instilling values that had guided Keisha through community college and into her current position at one of New York's most prestigious hotels. Keisha's shift began at 6 a.m., when the penthouse level was typically empty except for the occasional early rising guest departing for morning business meetings. She preferred these quiet hours when she could work efficiently without the complications of navigating around important visitors and their security details. The penthouse suites were architectural marvels, each featuring floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic views of Central Park and the Manhattan skyline. The furnishings cost more than most people's homes, with custom Italian leather furniture, original artwork, and technology systems that responded to voice commands in multiple languages. As Keisha entered the Sterling Suite, the hotel's most expensive accommodation at $50,000 per night, she noticed that yesterday's guest apparently hadn't checked out as scheduled. The suite was supposed to be vacant for deep cleaning before the next VIP arrival, but personal belongings remained scattered throughout the living area. Keisha knocked loudly and called out, "Housekeeping," before using her master key to enter, following hotel protocol for situations where guests might have overslept or failed to respond to checkout reminders. The morning silence was broken only by the hum of climate control systems and distant traffic noise from the street far below. Moving through the suite's living area toward the master bedroom, Keisha noticed expensive suits hanging in the walk-in closet and business documents spread across the mahogany desk. A half-empty bottle of aged whiskey sat on the coffee table next to prescription medication bottles that suggested their owner was managing significant health issues. The bedroom appeared empty initially, with the king-size bed neatly made and no obvious signs of recent occupancy. But as Keisha entered the marble bathroom to begin cleaning, she discovered a man in his 60s lying unconscious on the floor, dressed in silk pajamas and breathing irregularly. Keisha's first aid training kicked in immediately as she knelt beside the unconscious man to check his vital signs. His pulse was weak and erratic, his skin was pale and clammy, and his breathing was shallow and labored. These symptoms suggested either a heart attack or stroke, both life-threatening emergencies requiring immediate medical intervention. Without hesitation, Keisha called 911 on her work phone while simultaneously checking the man's airway and positioning him for potential CPR. "This is Keisha Washington at the Grand Meridian Hotel, penthouse level, Sterling Suite. I have an unconscious male, approximately 60 years old, possible heart attack or stroke. I need paramedics immediately." The 911 dispatcher guided Keisha through emergency assessment procedures while coordinating the ambulance response. Keisha checked for responsiveness, confirmed that the man was breathing but unconsciously, and monitored his pulse while providing the dispatcher with detailed information about his condition and location. "Can you identify the patient?" the dispatcher asked, as sirens became audible in the distance. Keisha looked around the bathroom for identification, finding a wallet on the marble counter that contained a driver's license and multiple credit cards bearing the name Richard Sterling. The name Richard Sterling meant nothing to Keisha personally, though she recognized it as belonging to someone obviously wealthy, given the suite's cost and the man's expensive personal effects. Her focus remained entirely on providing appropriate emergency care until professional medical help arrived. Paramedics reached the penthouse within 8 minutes, their response time aided by the hotel's cooperation in providing elevator access and floor plans. Keisha briefed them on the patient's condition and the circumstances of discovery while they began advanced life support procedures. "You did exactly the right thing," the lead paramedic told Keisha as they prepared Richard Sterling for transport to Mount Sinai Hospital. "Your quick response and proper positioning probably saved his life. Many people would have panicked or delayed calling for help." Keisha felt relieved that her actions had been appropriate and that the man would receive proper medical care. She had never enjoyed the dramatic aspects of emergency situations, but her community college courses in health sciences had prepared her to respond effectively when others needed help. After the paramedics departed with their patient, Keisha completed the incident report required by hotel management and resumed her cleaning duties. The Sterling suite would need thorough sanitization before being returned to service, and other penthouse accommodations required her attention throughout the remainder of her shift. Hotel management praised Keisha's professionalism and quick thinking in handling the medical emergency. Her supervisor noted that she had followed all protocols correctly while potentially saving a guest's life, reflecting the high standards of service that distinguished the Grand Meridian from its competitors. Later that evening, Keisha called her mother Diana to share the story of her unusual workday. "I found a guest unconscious in his bathroom this morning," she explained. "Had to call an ambulance and everything. The paramedics said I probably saved his life by responding quickly." Diana Washington felt proud of her daughter's composure and competence in handling such a serious situation. "You did the right thing, baby," she said warmly. "That's exactly how I raised you to respond when people need help, regardless of who they are or what they mean to you personally." The conversation turned to other topics as mother and daughter caught up on their respective weeks. But Diana couldn't shake a feeling of familiarity when Keisha mentioned the patient's name. Richard Sterling sounded like someone from her past, though she couldn't immediately place the context or circumstances of that connection. Over the weekend, Diana found herself thinking repeatedly about the name Richard Sterling and why it triggered such strong but unclear memories. The name was associated with something unpleasant from her past, but the specific details remained frustratingly just beyond her conscious recollection. Monday morning brought clarity when Diana saw a business news segment about Richard Sterling's hospitalization and his status as CEO of Sterling Industries, one of New York's largest real estate development companies. The television interview included archival footage from Sterling's early career, and Diana immediately recognized the face that had haunted her dreams for 20 years. Richard Sterling was the executive who had destroyed Diana's career 2 decades earlier when she was a young project coordinator at Sterling Industries. She had been thriving in her position, earning recognition for innovative solutions to complex development challenges, when she discovered she was pregnant with Keisha. Diana had approached Sterling directly to discuss maternity leave arrangements, confident that her strong performance record would protect her position. Instead, Sterling had responded by questioning her commitment to the company and suggesting that motherhood would compromise her professional focus and reliability. Within a week of announcing her pregnancy, Diana had been terminated under the pretext of company restructuring. Sterling had explained that her position was being eliminated to improve efficiency, though a male colleague with inferior qualifications was promoted to assume her responsibilities immediately after her departure. The job loss had been financially devastating for Diana as a single mother-to-be, forcing her to accept whatever employment she could find while dealing with pregnancy complications and mounting medical bills. She had been unable to find comparable work in real estate development, as Sterling's influence in the industry made other companies reluctant to hire her. Diana had spent the next 20 years working multiple jobs to support herself and Keisha, never achieving the career advancement that had seemed within reach before her pregnancy. She had instilled in her daughter the importance of education and hard work while carefully avoiding bitterness about the injustices that had derailed her own professional aspirations. Now, learning that Keisha had unknowingly saved the life of the man who had destroyed their family's financial security created a complex emotional situation that Diana struggled to process. The irony was overwhelming that her daughter's compassion and competence had benefited the person whose cruelty had shaped their lives so significantly. Diana wrestled with whether to tell Keisha about Richard Sterling's role in their family history. Part of her wanted to protect her daughter from the painful knowledge, while another part felt that Keisha deserved to understand the full context of her heroic actions and their unintended consequences. After several days of internal debate, Diana decided that honesty was more important than protection from difficult truths. She called Keisha and asked her to come over for dinner and an important conversation about their family's past and the man whose life she had saved. "Keisha, there's something I need to tell you about Richard Sterling." Diana began carefully as they sat in her modest apartment. "20 years ago, when I was pregnant with you, he was my boss at Sterling Industries. He fired me because of my pregnancy, saying that mothers couldn't be reliable employees." Keisha listened with growing shock as her mother described the circumstances of her termination and the years of struggle that had followed. The successful, confident woman she had saved was the same man who had condemned her family to decades of financial hardship through his discriminatory actions. "Are you telling me that the man I saved, the one the paramedics said would have died without my help, is the reason we grew up struggling?" Keisha asked, her voice filled with disbelief at the cosmic irony of the situation. Diana nodded sadly, understanding how difficult this revelation must be for her daughter. "I'm sorry you had to learn this after the fact. I should have warned you that his name was familiar, but I couldn't remember the connection until I saw him on the news." Keisha felt a complex mixture of emotions as she processed this information. Anger at Sterling's past actions toward her mother, confusion about the ethics of having saved someone who had caused their family such harm, and strange satisfaction that she had proven her competence to someone who had dismissed her mother's professional capabilities. "Do you regret that I saved him?" Keisha asked her mother directly. "Would you have preferred that I had recognized him and chosen not to help?" The question forced both women to confront their values and priorities in ways they had never expected. Diana took a long moment to consider her response before answering. "No, baby, I'm proud that you saved him. Not because he deserved it, but because saving people is who you are. Your character isn't determined by other people's actions or worthiness. You did the right thing because that's the kind of person I raised you to be." This conversation crystallized something important for both women about their values and resilience. They had survived Sterling's discrimination through their own strength and mutual support, building meaningful lives despite the obstacles he had created. Keisha's heroic actions reflected the character Diana had instilled despite their hardships. The following week, Keisha received an unexpected call from Sterling Industries requesting a meeting with her about the incident at the hotel. The company's representative explained that Mr. Sterling was recovering well and wanted to personally thank the woman who had saved his life. Keisha agreed to the meeting partly out of curiosity and partly because she wanted to observe the man who had affected her family so significantly. She didn't plan to reveal her connection to Diana, but she was interested in seeing what kind of person Sterling had become 20 years after making decisions that had devastated their lives. The meeting took place in Sterling's private office, an opulent space that reflected decades of business success, built on the kind of ruthless decision-making that had once targeted Diana. Sterling appeared healthier than when Keisha had found him unconscious, though he still showed signs of the medical crisis that had nearly killed him. "Ms. Washington, I wanted to thank you personally for saving my life," Sterling began, his voice carrying genuine gratitude mixed with the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "The doctors confirmed that your quick response and proper first aid prevented brain damage that would have resulted from delayed medical intervention." Keisha accepted his thanks politely, while studying the man whose actions had shaped her childhood through their impact on her mother's career. He seemed sincere in his appreciation, but she found it difficult to separate his current gratitude from her knowledge of his past cruelty toward pregnant employees. "I understand you work at the Grand Meridian," Sterling continued. "That's honest work, and your medical training shows initiative in developing skills beyond your primary job responsibilities. Have you considered pursuing healthcare as a career? I might be able to help with educational opportunities." The offer surprised Keisha, both because of its generosity and because of the unconscious condescension in Sterling's assumption that she needed his help to advance professionally. She realized that he saw her as someone whose potential required his recognition and assistance rather than someone capable of creating her own opportunities. I appreciate the offer, Keisha replied carefully, but I'm already working toward my goals through my own efforts. Saving your life wasn't about seeking rewards or advancement. It was about doing what anyone should do when someone needs help. Sterling nodded approvingly at her response, interpreting her independence as admirable work ethic rather than understanding that she might have reasons for not wanting his assistance. His perspective remained limited by assumptions about class and capability that had shaped his interactions with employees throughout his career. As the meeting concluded, Keisha felt both satisfied and frustrated by the encounter. Sterling's gratitude seemed genuine, but his worldview appeared unchanged by his near-death experience or his dependence on someone he might have previously dismissed as unimportant. Driving home from Sterling Industries, Keisha reflected on the strange turns that had brought her face to face with her family's past, while demonstrating her own competence and character. She had proven to herself that she could respond effectively in crisis situations and maintain her dignity when dealing with powerful people who had once hurt her family. Most importantly, she had shown that Diana's values and teachings had created someone capable of heroic actions, regardless of personal grudges or justified resentments. Saving Sterling's life hadn't erased his past actions, but it had demonstrated the kind of person Keisha had become despite the challenges those actions had created. That evening, Keisha shared the details of her meeting with Sterling with her mother, emphasizing his continued failure to recognize the broader implications of his treatment of employees, or the possibility that his current privilege might be connected to others' past suffering. Some people never learned, Diana observed philosophically, but you showed him something important about character and competence, even if he doesn't fully understand it, and you proved to yourself that you can handle anything life throws at you with grace and strength. The incident became a defining moment for both women, confirming their resilience and values while providing closure on a chapter of their past that had influenced their lives so significantly. Keisha's heroic actions had saved more than Sterling's life. They had demonstrated the triumph of character over circumstance and the power of rising above injustice through personal excellence.